For more on the investigation, we turn to former FBI supervisory agent Ali Soufan. Ali, the main suspect now is a Tunisian citizen. Again, authorities say that they found his identification and asylum papers in the cab of the truck used in the attack. What do you make of these developments? Well,
it's interesting. It indicates more and more that there is a possibility of an ISIS connection. As you know, Tunisians are the #1 contingency, national contingency in ISIS. There is probably about more than 6,000 Tunisians who joined ISIS. They have been with the Islamic State, or the so-called Islamic State, from the beginning, from the time of Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. It indicates he fit some sort of a profile, but also in the same time, it indicates to me that he is not the individual that has been, probably a lot of people have been talking about, an inspired individual.
Self-radicalized.
Self-radicalized, inspired, very similar to what we've seen in San Bernardino and Orlando, what we've seen in different places in Europe, to include the Nice attack, actually, which is similar in nature to this attack. I think this is a little bit different here. I think what we see is more...
He is, in fact, a de facto member of the Islamic State, as opposed to someone who watched a video on YouTube.
Right. It seems like it. First of all, the operation is a little bit more complicated than what we've seen, for example, in Nice or other places. It was done in stages. First, a truck was hijacked. Then the driver was murdered, and he didn't get rid of the body. He kept the body in the truck, and then he used the truck as a weapon, and then he was able to escape, something we didn't see before in many of the self-radicalized individuals that we've seen before.
It raises two questions for me then. It does, on one hand, then seem a more complex operation as opposed to, say, the Nice attack. But he left the one thing that could identify him behind, which seems a sloppy thing for somebody doing what he had done to that point to do.
Well, you know what? This is not really surprising, believe it or not. I mean, if you recall the Charlie Hebdo case, they left their driver's license in the car, and that's how the police was able to track them down. I remember in the USS Cole, for example, you know, they left the driver's license and the paper for the vehicle in the car. They didn't burn it, they didn't get rid of it, and that was one of our first leads that helped us link the Cole attack to Al-Qaeda and to Osama bin Laden. So we've seen that before. You know, maybe the papers fell down or the ID fell down when he was wrestling with the driver. So we don't know the circumstances around this. But I won't be shocked that you know, you find evidence in a crime scene.
And then you also mentioned escape. Now, the Charlie Hebdo, for instance, they did attempt to escape as well, but the escape happens as ISIS also claims responsibility here, which also seems to deviate from what we've seen prior.
Exactly, and that's something we never seen with the inspired type of attacks. You know, with San Bernardino, they waited until they found a post on Facebook that he pledged bay'ah to ISIS. The Orlando attack, they waited until the 911 tapes came out where he pledged bay'ah to ISIS and to al-Baghdadi. So they always wait to see either a Twitter message or a Facebook message or any kind of indication that that individual was actually inspired by them. In this case, they didn't wait. They don't have a body. They don't have a lunatic who already dead because of their message. But they claimed responsibility, which indicates to me there is a possibility that that individual is actually part of the group, not only inspired by the group, and that individual was probably connected to a larger network, either in Raqqa or in Europe itself.
So this then does inspire so many questions, greater ideas of the fight against terrorism, ISIS specifically.
Sure, especially in Europe.
Authorities have pointed out that while the caliphate acreage physically is being reduced, increasingly we are seeing attacks such as these in capitals of Western Europe, where some make the argument it's the new front line of this war. You tweeted Monday, and I quote, "We cannot arrest or kill our way to defeat an evil ideology." It seems the however many millions of dollars question to be asked here. How to prevent what seems so unpreventable?
See, since 9/11, we had a lot of tactical successes, right? We have been disrupting plots, arresting terrorists, killing them. We even killed Osama bin Laden himself. We killed the messenger, but we haven't been able to kill the message. And today, if you look at what's happening around the world, you know, we are fighting a message, we are fighting a narrative, and we will continue to play whack-a-mole as long as we don't deal with the incubating factors that's feeding into that narrative, that's feeding into this conspiratorial view of the world, that's taken advantage of the vacuum that exists in different conflict zones around the world, in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, and Libya. If we don't deal with all these situations, this war is going to go forever. And that's why what we need to do today, we need to start focusing, okay, how can we defeat this ideology? How can we defeat the narrative? Not by arguing with the people who are already inside that bubble of extremism, but by preventing them from recruiting more people, preventing them from finding another person who has maybe psychological, maybe mental, maybe religious, whatever it is in their mind, that will, you know, make him respond to their narrative and their message.
Everything you just said, eminently reasonable. So the person now, to answer the question, how do we defeat an idea, also responded to this attack specifically saying we must eradicate terrorists from the face of the earth. Right. How then do you see the war on terror changing, evolving under a Trump administration?
Well, this is a rhetoric. I mean, you know, we want to eradicate disease too. We want to eradicate drugs too. I mean, this is a rhetoric. I think we need to basically have cooler heads and look into what makes terrorism grow. Why Osama bin Laden only had 400 members on the eve of 9/11, and today there are thousands and thousands of people who adhere to Al-Qaeda's ideology. ISIS, remember, is a branch of Al-Qaeda. It's splintered out of Al-Qaeda. So they are part of this poisonous tree that's planted by Osama bin Laden. This tree is built on a conspiratorial view of the world. The United States is leading a Jewish Crusader alliance to destroy the Muslim world, to steal its oil, plunder its money. They hate Muslims. So when we start from our position in the West, saying and repeating the same thing that Osama bin Laden is saying, this is only going to increase the memberships of these groups, not decrease it. We have to understand how we can defeat that narrative, because without defeating the narrative, we can never stop these individuals, these recruiters, these terrorist groups from finding lost souls to recruit and to use them as weapons against us.
So many important questions, maybe the most important questions to answer. Ali Soufan, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.